ballroom challenge. If you can dance a waltz, I'll marry my son to you. William Thompson. The third's voice rang out over the glittering Manhattan ballroom as he raised his champagne glass toward the woman who had just dropped a crystal tray. The crash of breaking glass silenced 200 guests at the grand opening of Thompson Holdings' new skyscraper. All eyes turned to Keisha Williams, a 35-year-old contract cleaner who had worked the gallery events for only 3 weeks. "Dad, that's absurd," whispered Jonathan Thompson, 28, embarrassed by his father's cruel outburst. But William, flushed with whiskey and a sense of power, ignored him. "Let's see if she can even move to the music," he announced, striding to the center of the room like a man holding court. "Play a waltz. If she dances better than my wife, I'll keep my word." Imagine it. The heir to the Thompson fortune marrying the cleaning lady. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Some women hid their smiles behind gloved hands. The men shook their heads as though it were an evening's entertainment. Kesha knelt, gathering the shards with steady hands. Her eyes revealed no fear, only a striking calm, as if she were weighing every sneer and every cruel chuckle. Then she stood, wiped her palms on her apron, and met William's gaze. "I accept," she said, her clear voice cutting through the room like a bell. The orchestra faltered into silence. William blinked. "What did you say?" "I accept your challenge," Kesha repeated, a faint smile touching her lips. "And when I dance better than your wife, you'll keep your promise, even if you meant it as a joke." More laughter, sharper now, echoed off the marble walls. No one noticed the familiar spark in Kesha's eyes, the same spark that had once captivated audiences across the world's grandest stages before tragedy rewrote her life. 15 years earlier, as Kesha Morrow, she had been the celebrated principal dancer of the American National Ballet. Standing ovations, glowing reviews, the sensation of flight, until one fateful night. A car accident, months in a coma, and a doctor's verdict. She might never walk normally again, let alone dance. William's wife, Victoria Thompson, famous for teaching Manhattan's elite to glide across ballroom floors, approached with a razor-edged smile. "Darling, surely I don't need to compete with this," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "Don't be modest, Victoria," William replied. "You won the Club Waltz trophy last year. This should be fun." Jonathan hesitated. "Dad, this has gone too far. She was only doing her job." "The lady accepted," William interrupted. "Now she'll entertain us." What followed in that ballroom would prove that underestimating someone can be the most costly mistake of all. Subscribe for the next chapter of this unforgettable night, because the dance Kesha was about to deliver would change everything. Or should I share last week's little secret with your girlfriend? Jonathan's face went pale. Kesha instantly understood. William was using blackmail, another display of the ruthless control he held over everyone around him. "Start the music," William barked at the DJ. "Place your bets. 500 on my wife. 1,000 if you're bold enough to back the employee." Cruel laughter rippled through the crowd as guests pulled out cash, treating the spectacle like sport. Victoria stepped to the center of the dance floor, adding a few showy stretches to remind everyone of her experience. William turned toward Keisha with a wicked grin. "When you lose, and you will lose, I expect you on your knees, apologizing for wasting our time. And of course, you're fired." In that instant, something shifted in Keisha's eyes. The same fire that once carried her across international stages, the grit that got her through months of painful rehab just to walk again, the quiet dignity that had kept her alive when everything else was taken. "Mr. Thompson," she said calmly, her voice carrying an unexpected weight, "when I win, and I will, you'll keep your word about the marriage. And I want something more." Brows lifted around the room. William smirked. "Oh? Demands now? Go on, amuse me. I want you to stand before these guests and admit that you misjudged a woman because of her work, and offer a public apology." A hush fell. Guests whispered, realizing the game had turned serious. William laughed, but it sounded strained. "You've got nerve. Fine. But when you fail, you'll leave with nothing, not even your pride. What he didn't know, he was about to face a woman who had already lost everything once and had fought for every ounce of respect she now carried. While Victoria practiced graceful spins, Kesha stood motionless, mind sharp as a blade. 15 years of relentless therapy and hard-won strength had forged a resilience none of these privileged onlookers could imagine. "Look at her," someone whispered. "She probably can't dance a step." William moved through the crowd like a showman, collecting bets and fueling the mockery. 500 says she trips before the music ends. 1,000 says she walks off in shame. But Kesha noticed what William didn't. Jonathan wasn't laughing. He shifted uneasily by the wall, eyes down, clearly repelled by his father's cruelty. Then she spotted something familiar in his face. She had seen him before, 3 weeks ago, when she'd first taken this job. He was the only executive who treated contract staff with quiet respect. "Miss," came a low voice beside her. Kesha turned to see a man in his 60s, dressed in the understated uniform of building security. "I'm Marcus, head of security," he murmured, pretending to adjust his radio. "I saw you dance years ago. National Theater, principal soloist. Kesha Morrow. I was on security detail that night." Her heart skipped. Someone had recognized her. After years of keeping her past hidden, someone finally knew. "I thought you didn't survive the accident," Marcus whispered, eyes wide with respect. "The papers said you'd never dance again." "They said many things," Kesha replied softly. "Not all of them true." Marcus gave a slow, knowing nod. "What they did to you was wrong," Marcus said quietly, glancing toward William, who was still laughing too loudly. "And what he's doing now is even worse." In that instant, Kesha made the decision she had avoided for 15 years. This wasn't only about dancing. It was about finally revealing who she really was. "Marcus," she said, steady and calm, "I need a favor. When I'm done dancing, no matter what happens, record everything, every reaction." He looked puzzled but nodded. "Of course. But why?" Kesha allowed herself a small, knowing smile. "Because some people need a reminder that judging someone by appearance can be the most expensive mistake of all." Across the room, William raised his voice, eager to turn cruelty into spectacle. "Let's raise the stakes. If she finishes the song without tripping or stopping, I'll hand her $1,000. But when she fails, and she will, she'll scrub this entire room on her knees in front of us all." A ripple of uneasy laughter moved through the guests. A few murmured in protest, but no one dared challenge him. "Dad, this is too much," Jonathan tried again. "Enough, Jonathan," William barked. "You're too soft. The world has a hierarchy, and people like her," he pointed at Kesha, "need to know their place." Kesha began to move, not to the center of the floor, but to stretch. The motions were subtle, invisible to most, but Marcus recognized them instantly. They were the warm-up steps of a professional ballerina. "My God," he whispered, "she's really going to do it." Sensing the shift, Victoria stepped forward, unwilling to lose the spotlight. "Start the music," she told the DJ. "Let's end this charade." The DJ, clearly uncomfortable, cued a classical waltz. Victoria glided into familiar ballroom steps, polished enough for high society clubs, but unmistakably amateur to a trained eye. She earned polite applause. She embodied the privilege and polish the crowd expected. "Well done, darling," William said with exaggerated claps. "Now it's our guest's turn." Kesha walked to the center of the floor with slow, deliberate grace. Every step carried a quiet authority that unsettled more than a few spectators. This was not the walk of someone already beaten. "What song?" the DJ asked politely. "The same one," Kesha replied, "from the beginning." William chuckled. "Oh, she wants a second chance." How charming. "All right, play it again. Let's see how long she lasts." No one knew Kesha had chosen that waltz on purpose. It was the piece she had performed hundreds of times, one of the last she danced before the accident. a night that had earned her a 5-minute standing ovation and reviews calling it transcendent. She closed her eyes as the first notes filled the room, memories rushing back, the feeling of flight, the seamless connection to every note, the certainty that she had been born to dance. Doctors once insisted she would never walk properly again. The media declared her career over. For years she believed it, until she rebuilt her strength in secret, dancing alone through pain and quiet nights. Now, under the weight of every condescending glance, her hands rose with precise, practiced elegance. Several musicians frowned, sensing what the crowd had yet to realize. They were about to witness far more than a casual performance. No one in the grand ballroom could have imagined that the opening notes of that waltz would shatter more than silence. They were about to witness a moment that would upend the room's entire power dynamic. As the music began, Kesha moved, not with the tentative steps everyone expected, but with a grace that seemed to bend gravity itself. Her opening motions were delicate, almost teasing the audience into underestimating her. Then the tempo rose, and something extraordinary unfolded. Each step melted into the next, every turn sharpened with emotion that pulled every gaze toward her. Conversations died mid-sentence. William Thompson's laughter faltered. Victoria's confident smile drained away. They were no longer watching a cleaning employee. They were witnessing an artist reclaim her world. "She's remarkable," someone whispered. Kesha launched into a series of pirouettes that would challenge even elite ballerinas, then soared through a grand jeté so weightless it seemed to defy physics. This wasn't ballroom dance. This was classical ballet of the highest order, seamlessly woven into the waltz. Marcus kept his quiet promise, filming both Kesha's performance and the stunned faces around the room. William's expression shifted from mockery to confusion, then to something close to fear. "Impossible," he muttered. "Who is she?" When Kesha transitioned into the signature sequence that had once defined her career, a breathtaking fusion of classical technique that critics had called groundbreaking, the realization spread like lightning. "I know that choreography," gasped a well-known arts patron, "but it can't be." Jonathan Thompson, recording every second, recognized brilliance when he saw it. His father's arrogance meant nothing now. The music reached its climax. Kesha spun through a flawless string of fouettes, continuous one-legged turns that demanded staggering strength and precision, then struck a final pose, poised and unyielding. Her breathing was steady, her head held high. A profound silence followed, the kind that comes only after something truly unforgettable. Then a single pair of hands clapped, another joined. Within seconds, the entire hall stood, applause crashing like a wave. "Bravo!" someone shouted. "Extraordinary!" echoed another. William Thompson was ashen, humiliated before Manhattan's elite. Their eyes now held only disapproval and something like awe. Marcus stepped forward, phone still raised. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying across the hall, "allow me to present Kesha Morrow, former principal soloist of the American National Ballet." The name struck like a thunderclap. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few people even cried out in shock. "Kesha Morrow," Victoria stammered. "But she vanished after the accident. They said she'd never dance again." Kesha allowed a small, calm smile. "As you can see," she said, "the rumors of my disappearance were greatly exaggerated." Laughter of admiration, not mockery, spread through the room. But William wasn't laughing. The reality hit him like a freight train. He had publicly mocked one of America's greatest artists, and every second was captured on video. Marcus turned to him, voice firm. "Mr. Thompson, you promised, if she danced better than your wife, you'd offer your son's hand. I think everyone here agrees that condition has been met." Jonathan stepped forward, still filming, his eyes locked on Kesha. "Miss Morrow, I'd like to apologize publicly for my father's behavior," Jonathan said, voice steady. It was inexcusable. "Jonathan, enough!" William roared, his mask of control finally breaking. "You will not apologize, especially not to her." Kesha's eyes never wavered. "Mr. Thompson," she said calmly, "I believe there's a marriage proposal to discuss. A man of your stature keeps his word, doesn't he?" The ballroom fell silent. The crowd sensed this was no longer a simple contest of dance skills. "You're out of your mind if you think I'll honor a drunken joke," William snapped, clinging to arrogance. "Not a joke," Kesha replied with a quiet smile. "Marcus, would you play the recording, please?" Marcus lifted his phone and pressed play. William's own voice filled the hall, boasting, doubling the stakes, promising his son's hand if Kesha outdanced his wife. Gasps and uneasy laughter rippled through the audience. "That's blackmail," William barked. "No," Kesha said evenly. "It's accountability. You made a public bet in front of 200 witnesses. Now everyone can see whether your word means anything." Jonathan stepped forward. "Miss Morrow," he said, using her true name with respect, "I will honor the promise. Not because I must, but because any man would be proud to stand beside someone with your strength and dignity." A low murmur of surprise spread through the room. William's face flushed crimson. "If you do this, you're out. Out of the company, out of the family, everything." "Then so be it," Jonathan answered, extending his hand toward Kesha. "Some things matter more than money. Like integrity." Kesha looked from Jonathan's hand to the hushed crowd, then back to William, who trembled with rage. "Mr. Thompson," she said, voice clear enough to carry to every corner of the room, 15 years ago, people like you decided I had no value after an accident left me imperfect. Tonight you tried to shame me again because of my work and the color of my skin. But I've learned that true nobility isn't about inheritance or bank accounts. It's about how we treat others when we think no one is watching." She turned to Jonathan with a warm smile. "Your son understands that. As for dinner, I'd be happy to join him. But marriage is a choice made through love and respect, not wagers." The ballroom erupted in applause, not for the dance alone, but for her words. William, pale and trembling, muttered something about letting the lawyers handle it, and stormed out. Victoria followed, face flushed with humiliation. Marcus lowered his phone and grinned. "This is going to be very interesting when the video goes public." He was right. By morning, the clip had gone viral worldwide. Headlines blared, "Millionaire tries to humiliate legendary ballerina and loses. Contracts worth millions evaporated overnight." William's board demanded an emergency meeting. Jonathan found his father in his office, surrounded by newspapers screaming his disgrace. "The board has voted," he said quietly. "You have 1 hour to resign, or they'll remove you." William stared at him, for the first time seeing defiance instead of obedience. "You betrayed me," he rasped. "No," Jonathan replied, calm and unflinching. "You betrayed yourself." "You betrayed yourself," Jonathan said quietly, "the moment you decided arrogance mattered more than humanity." While William faced the ruins of his reputation, Kesha's world opened wide. Invitations poured in. 3 international ballet companies asked her to choreograph special performances. Lincoln Center offered a solo event. Hollywood producers wanted her story for the big screen. But the offer that moved her most came from her former students at a small community school. They pooled their savings, just $23, to help her return to teaching. "I'll accept," Kesha said, eyes shining, "but only if we make it bigger." 6 months later, the Kesha Morrow Center for the Arts opened in the heart of Manhattan, funded by donations that streamed in from around the world after her story went viral. Jonathan Thompson, now leading a reformed, socially responsible version of the family business, became its first major donor. William Thompson, meanwhile, lost everything: the company, his fortune, and the family who once stood by him. Victoria filed for divorce and moved to Europe. Reports placed William as a low-level consultant, a quiet shadow of the man who once believed wealth gave him power over others. At the grand opening of the center, Marcus watched Kesha guide a group of smiling children through their first ballet steps. "You know what impresses me most?" he said. "This isn't just a victory over prejudice. It's a master class in true nobility." Kesha smiled, her voice gentle but strong. "Sometimes we have to lose everything to find who we really are, and sometimes people have to lose everything to learn who they should never have tried to be." Jonathan appeared with a bouquet from the garden he'd planted around the center. "Ready for dinner?" he asked, offering his arm. "Ready," Kesha replied, embracing not only the evening ahead, but the new life she had built from the ashes of the old. Her triumph wasn't about destroying William Thompson. It was about creating something so inspiring that his cruelty faded into irrelevance. Kesha proved that when we meet prejudice with dignity and answer hatred with excellence, we don't just win, we transform the world. Have you faced someone who tried to diminish your dreams? Share your story in the comments and subscribe for more true tales of resilience and extraordinary courage.